Archaic Records.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Archaic Records here with you again. My name is Jamie, coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. And for today's episode, we're going to go back to 2017 to take a quick look at the self-titled debut album by British punk rock band Interrobang. Now, for some reason, if you are unfamiliar with Interrobang are a three-piece traditional/anarcho British punk rock band featuring both Dunstan Bruce and Harry Hamer, formerly of CHUMBAWAMBA, along with Stephan Griffin. And if I'm being perfectly honest with you, it was this band's connection to CHUMBAWAMBA that first piqued my interest when I caught wind of this record coming out back in 2017. As I've mentioned before on this channel, I am a huge, unapologetic, and unashamed CHUMBAWAMBA fan. Well, maybe just a little bit ashamed. That being said, I have plenty of musical pleasures that are much more guilty than that of CHUMBAWAMBA. And as I mentioned before on this channel, I feel as if CHUMBAWAMBA has sort of been unfairly relegated into that heaping mound of one-hit wonders from both the 1980s and the 1990s. For one thing, my definition of what a one-hit wonder is, I think sort of differs from what the traditional viewpoint is. In my opinion, a one-hit wonder isn't necessarily a band that just happened to have one big song on the radio or MTV back in the day. My definition of a one-hit wonder is an artist or a band that literally has like one good song. When I think of a one-hit wonder, at least according to my definition, I think of artists such as D-Light, Divinals, Pizzicato 5. Now, these are all bands that have one song that is the Jugs, but once you sift through their catalog, you quickly discover that there really isn't much noteworthy beyond that. And I would make the argument about CHUMBAWAMBA specifically that throughout the course of this band's 30-year career and their 16 studio albums, that this was a band that consistently pumped out the groceries. Not to mention the fact that over the course of their career, this band evolved massively over the years. This was a band that, of course, started out as sort of a traditional anarcho punk band. From there, they went into sort of a club dance, almost, dare I say, techno phase. And by the end of this band's career, they had evolved into basically an anarcho string kind of bluegrass band. And as far as I'm concerned, I was there every step of the way. I celebrate this band's entire catalog. Now, that being said, if you are in the market for just another CHUMBAWAMBA album, when you pick up this record Interrobang, which came out in 2017, I suggest that you may be shopping in the wrong store. This is certainly not just another CHUMBAWAMBA album. And I don't say just another CHUMBAWAMBA album because I'm a huge fan, but this is a much different animal than anything that you find throughout the CHUMBAWAMBA catalog. This album is much more of sort of a throwback to sort of the first wave traditional punk rock sound. If you're a fan of bands like The Clash, Sex Pistols, Buzzcocks, any of those artists, I think that this is an album that will be right up your alley. And as far as the lyrical content, this is a record that is much different, I think, than anything CHUMBAWAMBA did. Now, of course, CHUMBAWAMBA took on a lot of very serious topics with their political activism, but they always did it in a way that was a little bit bratty and sarcastic, whereas I find that the songwriting on this record is a little bit more serious. It's a little bit more dark. It's a little bit grim. And it's certainly a little bit more mature. In fact, I would make the argument that this record sort of creates a whole new subcategory within the punk universe, which I realize is something that we don't need. I mean, the last thing we need is another subcategory in this world. But in my opinion, this record you would sort of classify under the subgenre of salt and pepper punk, because this record does take on a lot of sort of darker issues and things that come up in your life as you reach middle age. Lyrically, a lot of the content on this record has to do with aging, social irrelevance, mortality, and as you would expect from Dunstan Bruce or anybody associated with CHUMBAWAMBA, of course, there is that political activism tied in as well. And As I mentioned before, when this record was first sort of announced back in 2017, and I realized that it was featuring Dunstan Bruce on lead vocals, I was extremely excited because of the connection to Chumbawamba, but also because I have always been a huge fan specifically of Dunstan Bruce. I think he is an incredible songwriter. I think he is a very talented singer, and I think that he is a very dynamic frontman. And of course, the first thing you discover about this record is the artwork, which I think is absolutely beautiful. It has 3 portraits of the band members done by an artist by the name of Miriam Klein Stahl, and I've always been a huge fan of these sort of black and white portraitures. I think the artwork on this record is absolutely amazing. As I mentioned before, this record came out in 2017. I love the production on this record. It has a real sort of authentic 1970s British first wave of punk sound. And as I mentioned before, I think that this is a record that, I was extremely excited about when it came out. And to be perfectly honest with you, when I picked it up and I listened to it for the first time, this was a record that really kind of blew me away. Even as big a fan as I was of Dunstan Bruce and Chumbawamba, before listening to it, this was a record that still managed to really blow me away. This is a record that I still listen to on extremely heavy rotation. And if I had to go back and take a look at the records that came out in 2017, I would make the suggestion, at least, that this is probably still one of my favorite records to come out in 2017. So if you are unfamiliar with this record or Interrobang at all, I would highly recommend you go out and check out this record as soon as possible. This is also available, of course, on all the streaming services, Spotify and Apple Music and all of the such. Anyway, the first song on this record is a song called Here Now. This is a song that has, again, a real throwback 1970s kind of Clash, Sex Pistols, Buzzcocks kind of feel to it. Lyrically, this song it kind of starts off by saying, hey, it's been a while. Times have changed. Remember me? I was a guy in the band. You remember that band? The band that first kind of set out to burn down the system, but then sort of, became popular, only to fade into relative obscurity until becoming kind of this, ironic pop culture punchline. Well, I'm still here, and I'm still pissed off, and I still don't like what I see going on in the world around me. I love this song. He describes himself in this song as being a bottle of rage, which of course I just can totally get behind. But I love this song because this song sort of represents to me, and as does Dunstan Bruce, sort of represents how you kind of age as somebody that grows up in this sort of punk rock world. He is somebody who is always very articulate, very intelligent, very well-spoken, and somebody who I feel as if has sort of aged gracefully in this kind of, punk rock universe. I would sort of accuse Henry Rollins of doing the same thing, if that's an accusation. I always have told people that my goal, as I get older, as somebody who has been basically into the punk rock scene most of my adult life, my goal is to sort of age like people like Henry Rollins and Dunstan Bruce, where you age with a little bit of dignity. Now, I'm not throwing rocks at this guy because I'm a huge fan, and I have been for most of my adult life as well. In fact, it was his band, Generation X, that got me into this whole punk rock thing to begin with. But you compare somebody like Henry Rollins and Dunstan Bruce to somebody like Billy Idol, who Billy Idol is pushing 70 years old, and he still kind of goes out there and sort of plays this cartoon character, and he dresses in clothes that make him look as if he, still shops at Hot Topic. You think to yourself, it's not sad necessarily, but it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look age appropriate. And there is a way to sort of age gracefully into this kind of punk rock maturity. Like I said, this is sort of a salt and pepper punk rock album. These are all guys who talk about, this whole record, it seems is like about getting old and, facing mortality and, becoming sort of culturally or socially irrelevant as the younger generations sort of become the more featured demographic when it comes to the world that we live in. And I think that that's sort of kind of what this song is about, is, hey, I'm still here, I'm still pissed off, I'm still angry. I had somebody the other day call me out on sort of being an older kind of punk rock person at my work the other day. This guy came in, and he's not necessarily the nicest guy in the world. Sometimes, I gotta tell you this, being from California and living in Tennessee, people will always tell you, oh, people in Tennessee are so nice. Well, yes and no. People in Tennessee are generally nicer than people in California. Now, that's not really setting the bar very high. But I would make the observation that most people, at least in Nashville, now maybe in Tennessee in general, people are nicer, but here in Nashville, people aren't necessarily the nicest. You get a lot of people who are sort of status-driven, elitists, and then you get a lot of the sort of small dick Trump guys who are just not nice anyway. But this guy the other day called me out on the music I listen to and the way I dress and the way that I talk, and basically he accused me of being an overgrown teenager and essentially asked me, when are you going to outgrow that shit? He told me that I should move on to the next stage of my life and have children. And I didn't say this out loud because I was working in a position where he was my client and it is my job to serve him. So I am not really the type of person and I'm not a confrontational person to begin with, but I'm not the type of person who's going to, insult somebody that I am serving at my job, because I do take my job very seriously. But I remember thinking to myself, why should I have kids? Just so I can end up as miserable as you are? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm miserable. Don't get me wrong. But I don't need two dependents to compound it, son. Anyway, I love this song. I think it's a great sort of kickoff to the record. It kind of addresses the elephant in the room, which is Chumbawamba, which is something that, at least in my opinion, Dunstan Bruce has always sort of displayed a pretty good sense of humor about. Not that he even needs not that there should be a sense of humor involved, because I love Chumbawamba, but I think he's always sort of had a sense of humor about it. He's gone out in the past, I've seen recently, he's been doing some spoken word dates along with the Chumbawamba documentary, and, I'm sure Chumbawamba is something that it requires a sense of humor sometimes. I don't know what to tell you. I love that band. I'm not making fun of them. Anyway, the second song after that is a song called Inclement Weather. This song has like a real traditional sort of post-punk kind of feel to it. I love this song. This is probably the most optimistic song on the record. I don't know that this is necessarily an optimistic record, per se, but this is probably the most optimistic tune on it. This song talks about how he had, fallen off the track a little bit, but thanks to a nice swift kick in the butt, he's back on track. He talks about how he is embracing the next adventure of his life, but he would prefer to do it in comfortable shoes and with a clean place to shit, which again I think is sort of a way of talking about his aging. And as you listen to this record most of the way through, you sort of get the impression that Dunstan Bruce is sort of almost obsessed with the concept of aging. Another artist who is a little bit older than Dunstan Bruce, but another artist that I absolutely love and admire, who is just obsessed with aging and you can tell is really fearing his own mortality, is Gary Newman, which is sort of ironic in a way since he's Trent Reznor's little goth prince now. But you get the sense that Dunstan Bruce is sort of really kind of obsessing with his the fact that he has reached middle age at this point in time. The next song after that is a song called Asking for a Friend. This is a song that has a real, back to the first couple Clash records, this has a real sort of Clash sound to it. Lyrically, I love this song. It's very sort of relatable even to somebody like me. Now, I'm not that much younger than Dunstan Bruce, honestly. I'm somebody who's in the earlier stages of middle age, but this is a song from the perspective of somebody who just does not understand, social media and, the world that we're living in now, the techno world. He's certainly somebody who's not techno native, and as soon as he feels as if he's got a grasp on everything, of course, technology moves so fast that once again he's sort of left behind. He talks about Googling things such as middle-age depression and erectile dysfunction. This is a character who certainly does not understand technology. He certainly does not understand things like TikTok and Post Malone. But he's doing the best he can to sort of survive in this world that is sort of foreign to him. I love the lyrics of the song. I'm somebody who, even at my age, I am totally not techno-native. At my work all the time, I annoy my coworkers because I cannot figure out the computer. My wife all the time gets irritated with me because I have to ask her 100 times to show me how to do things on the phone and on the computer, and it just irritates her to death. But I'm sort of the character in the song asking for a friend as well. The next song after that is a song called Are You People Ready? The song is, again, I think the song is also about aging. It talks about how I've gotten older, but my position is steadfast. I demand people, politics, and music that are hard-hitting and substantial. I'm not moving to the suburbs. I'm not going to punch out a bunch of gross kids. I'm not going to go, try to cram in 18 holes after church. That's not who I am. I'm still the person I am. Yeah, I may have some gray hair and some wrinkles around my eyes, but I'm still the same angry, pissed off guy that I ever was. This song is very fiery. It has a real up-tempo, fiery kind of feel to it. This song calls out one of my favorite topics, or one of my favorite targets when it comes to subcultures of people. This song calls out limousine liberals, which is something that I've always sort of associated from my home area in the Bay Area. Dunstan Bruce has no use for these people, nor should anybody else. He really calls out the sort of wine and cheese Democrats, people that in this country are sort of the liberal yuppies, the fake liberals, at least in my opinion, people that have, destroyed San Francisco, people that have basically, they sort of hold to these like liberal values, but they don't want to live next to the Brown family, people like that. That's who I associate as being limousine liberals, and he takes them to the woodshed in this song. The next song after that is, it's one of my favorite songs on this record. It's called Mad as Hell. Pretty self-explanatory. Again, it's got like a real traditional British punk rock kind of vibe to it. Basically talking about how he's still angry after all these years. Get your face out of your phone. Take a look around at the world. Don't tell me to be calm. How can you be so calm? Is basically the theme of this song. He also addresses his aging in this song. Again, that's a theme basically through 95% of the record is, getting older, becoming sort of socially irrelevant, and facing mortality, in the not too near future. Realizing at a certain point in time, and I'm in this boat myself, that you have less years ahead of you than you have behind you. It's an interesting realization. I know for a fact that I have less years ahead of me than I do behind me. I just know that as a fact. And it is sort of a weird feeling when you realize that. I think that's part of what this song is about. I think it's part of what a lot of this record is about. The next song after that is my favorite song on the entire record. It's got like a real traditional kind of jam feel to it. The song is Curmudgeon. Basically, it's kind of the same thing. It's, hey, I'm getting older. But this song is more kind of antisocial in that, hey, I don't really want to be bothered. I don't really want to talk to you. I don't want to make small talk. Curmudgeon is one of my favorite songs on the record. I sort of pictured Dunstan Bruce in real life as sort of being kind of a curmudgeon. There's just something kind of cool about old British curmudgeons. In particular, my wife tells me that I'm a curmudgeon all the time, and I'm probably 15 years younger than Dunstan Bruce. So when I get to be his age, man, I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame as far as I'm concerned. The next song after that is a song called Music of the Gross. This is another one of my favorite songs on the record. This is sort of a different subject matter lyrically. This song has a real traditional kind of, punk rock kind of vibe to it as well. But this song is a celebration of independent music, real music, music that has substance and integrity. Music that isn't mass-produced in order to be easily digestible by the sheep. Music such as Post Malone, Taylor Swift, and anything that is popular today. Here in Nashville, Nashville is thought of worldwide as Music City, and in a lot of ways, I guess that's true. There is a lot of really good music that comes out of Nashville. Now, you're going to kind of have to dig down deep a little bit for it in order to get underneath the surface of all of the crap that most of the tourists flock to this city to see, because most of the music that comes out of Nashville, or at least if you go down to Broadway, which is where all the tourists hang out here, if you go down to Broadway, most of the music that you're going to see on Broadway is the stuff that he's talking about in this song. It's stuff that's basically mass-produced, it's soulless, it's something that is study grouped, and these people, the people that write these songs, my wife and I went to this, they have these things out here called Writers' Rounds, and it's actually a pretty cool thing here in Nashville, but you get a bunch of songwriters together, they sit around in a circle, and they sing songs, and they tell their stories about it, and the last one that we went to go see an artist by the name of Amigo the Devil, who my wife loves. My wife loves. I am not a fan of Amigo the Devil. Just saying it right now. Amigo the Devil is garbage, at least in my opinion. But she wanted to go see this writer's round, and there was a girl there, and I don't remember her name now, but there was it was Amigo the Devil and this other singer-songwriter by the name of Willie Carlisle, who's another guy I'm not really into. But there was this girl who worked there, and she used to work on Music Row here in Nashville, and she told the story about what it's like to actually work on Music Row in Nashville, and you write these songs for these record companies. And basically what you do is you go in the morning, and you clock in at 8 o'clock, and you sit at your little cubicle, and you write songs. And then at 5 o'clock, you stand up, you push your chair in, you clock out, and you go home. And that was the sort of creative, and I use the word creative loosely, but that was sort of the environment in these songwriting companies that these record companies hire. And she said it very much had a feeling as if you were working at a Nissan plant, putting together transmissions. By the end of the day, you were expected to have X number of songs written. And the expectation was that all of these songs would become big hits. And of course, these songs go out on the market, and record companies and artists purchase them, and then they get recorded, and hopefully they end up turning a profit. And it's all about business. It's all about commerce. It's all about, you have to hit this number of, you want this many sales on your songs by the end of the year. And it makes me think of this song because that's what I think of when I think of Nashville. I don't necessarily think of all of these artists. Now, there's a romantic view of Nashville that I love, where, you get the kid who rides the bus into town with a guitar on his back and $20 in his pocket, and he comes to Nashville to become the next big thing, and he's a legitimate artist. And I love that kind of romantic view of Nashville. And when I walk around downtown Nashville, I still kind of have that image in my head, or I want to have that image in my head, but the reality is that Nashville is basically, it's a song factory. And I think that's what he's talking about in the lyrics of the song, not specifically Nashville, but he's talking about music that's just mass-produced. People like Taylor Swift and Post Malone and, Coldplay and bands like that don't necessarily have the most integrity, but they're good at creating product. Taylor Swift is probably the biggest artist in the world right now. Is she the most talented? Of course not. She's good at creating a product. She's good at marketing herself. Somebody like Interrobang, who run laps around Taylor Swift or Post Malone or any of those artists. These guys have like 2,000 listeners on Spotify, son! Anyway, the next song after that is a song called Taciturn. I'm such an idiot, I had to look up what taciturn was in the dictionary. Taciturn is somebody that is very reserved or says very little. I like this song a lot. It has, again, kind of a throwback kind of, punk kind of vibe. I think the messaging in this song is that, sometimes silence says words, or says more than words can ever express. You don't necessarily want to be the person who says too much. I really like this song. I am somebody who, when I'm out in social settings, I tend to be very quiet. I'm kind of the guy who sits on the sidelines of society, and I tend to sort of be an observer. I find this song to be very relatable. The next song after that is a song called Do You Remember? This song has sort of an early Devo meets kind of Buzzcocks feel to it. It's got some kind of electronic elements that remind me of sort of early Devo. The song starts off talking about how he remembers where he was when his father died, and you get the feeling that his father was somebody who was dying sort of a slow, painful death. He talks about how he has sort of onset dementia and how he's in a lot of pain, and how the nurses come in and they give him his painkillers. And you sort of get the sense that this relationship was a little bit strained, and as a middle-aged man, you're watching this father character die, and perhaps the relationship never really, got repaired to the point that you would have liked it to, before this time comes. He also talks about how after his father dies, basically people just come in, they grab his belongings, and they donate them all to the Goodwill, and sort of how sad that is, that somebody's whole life is just kind of thrown into boxes and, carted off to what the British equivalent to a Goodwill would be. This is a very sort of sad song. It conjures up images in my head that I am not even ready to sort of at all wrap my brain around, so I don't even want to go there, if you know what I mean. The next song after that is a song called Love It All. This has like a real cool traditional sort of post-punk vibe to it. This is another song about death. I think this song is about kind of a fairly unremarkable death. I think this is about somebody who dies alone. It talks about how when this person in the song passes away, there's no weeping, there's no fanfare. There's just the paramedics and probably the neighbor that alerted the police of the stink in the air. This is sort of a sad death. This is somebody that probably died alone. I realize that that's something that's probably a lot of people's biggest fears. I assume it's something that is in my future. But this is a very dark, sad song. This is about somebody who, this person in this song clearly sort of lived on the fringes of society, didn't have much family, obviously didn't have many friends, and probably wasn't discovered till they were funkifying the neighborhood, and now they're just sort of getting carted out. As the song says, there's nobody crying, there's no fanfare. It's just a body, getting rolled out of a house and into the meat wagon and probably into the incinerator after that. The next song after that is one of my favorite songs on the entire record. The song is called Based on a True Story. This also has sort of a real kind of cool, traditional post-punk, almost sort of like dark wave kind of vibe to it. This is another song about death. This is a song about your own death, and kind of wondering what is going to be written about you in your obituary, and who may or may not end up showing up at your funeral, and maybe the way you either did or didn't touch people's lives, how you were going to be remembered, the legacy that you were going to leave behind when your time on this planet is over. This is something that I do consider in my daily life. This is something that for many, many years in my younger life, I was somebody who was very sort of angry and negative, and I wasn't necessarily the nicest person to be around. I had a lot of anger based on places that I had been emotionally in my life, and at a certain point in time, I made a conscious decision that I wanted to shed as much of that negativity as possible and try to embrace a more positive outlook on life and try to project a little bit of positivity out into the world, because really, at the end of the day, all of us have a very finite shelf life as far as the amount of time that we're going to spend here, and it's up to us what we end up leaving behind. And I have made a conscious decision in my life that I want to leave something a little bit positive behind. I want to leave the world a little bit sunnier than I left it. Now, I realize that's ironic coming from a guy who wears all black every day, but it's still the truth. And when it comes to this little YouTube channel that I run, it's the same exact thing. This is a place of positivity. I am somebody who is very passionate about music. Music is something that has been probably the most positive thing in my life, not counting my relationships with my wife or friends or family or anybody else, my dogs for that matter. But music is the most important thing in my life, and it's something that I owe my life to. Music, I think, literally has saved my life on multiple occasions. So when it comes to this channel, Archaic Records, this is a place of positivity. I talk about music that I love. Now, it would be easy to come out here all the time and be negative and spread hate and anger and all the other things that you see all over social media, the things that most people love on social media, but I'm not going to do that. I have to be me. I have to live my life with a certain amount of integrity. This channel has to have a certain amount of integrity. I don't care if this channel has no viewers at all. This channel is going to be what it is. I am not going to play the game where I become this hate-filled curmudgeon just in order to get people to watch this stupidity. Because this is a positive place. I talk about bands and artists I love. Now, there are many, 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 many bands and artists that I don't love. There are many that I despise. But there's also albums by artists that I love on this channel that I haven't talked about because I don't want it to turn into a positive thing. Last year, when Iggy Pop released his new album. Now, Iggy Pop is beyond legend. I mean, he is one of my favorite recording artists of all time. He is a god. He doesn't need somebody like me to sit here and sell him to you. That is a joke, see, because I am a toad and Iggy Pop is God. But, in my opinion, Iggy Pop's last record blew chunks, son. And initially, I had wanted to review that record on this channel, but I really couldn't say much positive about it. So instead of coming out here and burning the place down with anger and negativity, I chose to just sort of leave it alone until now, obviously. But that is sort of what this song makes me think of, is what are you leaving behind? What is the world going to be like when you're gone? Is it going to be a slightly happier place? Or is it going to be a more angry, pissed off place? Trust me, I work with people every single day. I can tell you from over 20 years experience in my career the ugliness of people. I just prefer not to live my life like that. And I used to. I'm not saying I didn't. I used to. But that's what this song makes me think of. It's just leave the legacy behind that you want. I want to leave something positive behind. I want people to have had a couple of Snickers from, at my benefit, hopefully. Anyway, the next song is a song called Billingham. This has like a real sort of like pop punk, almost kind of like a modern pop punk sound to it. This is the one song I would say has a little bit more of a modern sound. When I say modern, I mean kind of like a 90s pop punk. This doesn't have like the 70s Britpop or 70s punk rock kind of feel to it. This song is a quote-unquote love letter to his hometown of Billingham. At least that's how he starts off the song. And then he sort of goes into all of the reasons why he hates his hometown. Now, I'm somebody also who I grew up in a, town that I didn't necessarily have a lot of use for, and a place where I sort of felt like an outsider in my own home, as people say. But as I mentioned before on this channel, 2018, my hometown fell victim to a wildfire out in California, which has completely changed the way I feel about my hometown. Now I actually take a fair amount of pride in my hometown. It's part of my story. It doesn't have to define me, it doesn't have to define who I am. It is sort of where I'm from. But even before that fire, my attitude towards my hometown had sort of softened, considerably. As I mentioned before, I'm somebody who's trying to kind of like put positivity as much as possible out in the world. So the song Billingham, you get the sense that Dunstan Bruce isn't necessarily the biggest fan of his hometown. It's an okay song. It isn't my favorite song on the record. It might be my least favorite song on the record, but it is a song that I do like. I don't really think that there's anything really bad on this record at all, as far as I'm concerned. The next song after that is a song called Breathe. This has like a kind of a cool post-punk sort of Wall of Voodoo type of vibe to it. This song, I think, is basically about the fear of becoming complacent in, again, your older middle age. I really like this song a lot. It's got like a cool post-punk, bouncy, poppy kind of vibe. The last song on this record is called Am I Invisible Yet? This song sounds like something right off of the first Clash record. Again, this song is about getting older. We've sort of talked about that theme throughout the course of this record. As I mentioned before, you get the sense that Dunstan Bruce in his songwriting is a little bit obsessed with the concept of aging. And I feel like this song is sort of about, the feeling of falling into sort of cultural obscurity, realizing that your demographic is no longer the prime demographic. You are no longer in that 18 to 25, 25 to 34 range. You have moved past that, and you are no longer the focal point of quote-unquote what's cool. You are no longer the target of advertisers, and you're just, sort of left to go out and live the rest of your life. I do like that song, though. It is a good way to close out the record. I think it's actually probably one of the best songs on the entire record. If you, like I said before, if you have not checked out the 2017 self-titled debut album by Interrobang, I don't know what you're waiting for. This album is one of the best from 2017, at least in my opinion. March 28th of this year, Interrobang announced that they are, as they put it, beavering away on a brand new album, which, at least in my opinion, is incredibly good news. I can't wait to hear what the next record sounds like. And earlier this week, via the social media platforms, Dunstan Bruce announced that he himself has a new solo single coming out called Fucking Expensive. And I am fucking excited. Anyway, man, thank you so much for checking out this video. This is Archaic Records. My name is Jamie. Coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. Be sure to go out and support your local record store. Check back most weeks. I said most weeks for Morrissey Monday. A weekly celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths, as well as other record content and album reviews throughout the week. And until next time, my friends, talk to you then.